Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. This is our final session for the day here at the LinkUp, the virtual conference for girls and women in STEM, where our main theme is to see it is to be it, because we wanted to show you guys some amazing people working in the fields that are really making changes and also just kind of working in those fields like AI, robotics, genetics, space, and aerospace, so that you can get an idea of what people are working on and also where you could possibly fit in as well in your own careers. Before I pass it on to someone who's going to give us even more insight into careers, especially, well, specifically in the AI field, I just want to remind you about our wonderful giveaway. We have a little LinkUp t-shirt, the LinkUp t-shirt here for you all, just ready. And then we also have an Arduino, because I remember how important it was for me when I was getting started with robotics. This was really helpful to just learn a little bit of the basics. And then we have a $100 gift card for Digicel. That way you can stay connected while you're learning all of these wonderful STEM things. And I would now like to hand it over to Mr. Dmitry Mnushkin, and also to give a huge thank you to him and Treefrog Consulting for being gold sponsors of the Cameron's Lab, the LinkUp conference. For their support for girls, women in STEM has been phenomenal and honestly inspiring to learn from. I remember when I was at BHS in my high school years getting started with robotics, and they also supported me and my dreams of being in tech back then. So it's wonderful to join up with them again for this session. So Mr. Dmitry, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to learning from you.
Thanks, Cameron. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Initially, this presentation was going to be called AI Questions Your Future Employer Wants to Know. But I wanted to tailor this a little bit more to the students who are attending this particular seminar, because I'm sure that one of the biggest questions on their minds is, what kind of job am I going to get when I graduate? And how can I get that job? So I wanted to make this presentation a little bit twisted towards that, but also talk about AI in general and some of the things that we've been seeing. So we'll start maybe with a quick introduction of myself and Treefrog. I've been building software for the past 30 years. Founded Treefrog Treefrog Consulting, about 11 years ago in Bermuda. I have been living here for 25 years, and all that time I've been working with the reinsurance industry on the island. And I have in that capacity worked on several AI projects in the past. So I've got some sense of what this technology can do and how businesses, at least locally, have been adopting it. So let's pop over and just take a look at the quick outline of what this presentation is going to be. The presentation runtime will be reasonably quick. It depends on how much participation we have on the seminar from the individuals in it. But we're going to cover a few topics like what is AI, examples of AI for us, how we actually use it on our day-to-day basis, how AI is used by businesses, and then transition into what are the skills that you need to get hired and how you can use AI to get that job. And then, end with a few kind of things you can do right now to get prepared for all of that. At any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to pop a question into the chat. I'll be monitoring that. And let's dive right in. So what is AI? This will be a question for some of our audience members, but we'll just skip ahead and talk about some of the kind of the simplest definitions of what an AI is. In general terms, it's building computers and machines that can reason, learn, and behave much like we would expect a human being to do. That's kind of what is covered by AI, but in detail, it covers a lot of other things. There's various topics in computer science, data analytics, and statistics use various machine learning algorithms. And we have hardware and software designed specifically for AI. I'm sure you've been hearing about some of these companies like NVIDIA, whose stock market prices are going through the roof because they make chips that AI companies need in order to train their AIs. There's a whole section of linguistics. How does the computer understand what we're saying and make sense of that? Then there's a whole neural network section of AI, which talks about how computers can make the right decisions in various situations. And last, but certainly not least, large language models and generative AI. These are the things that have kind of propelled AI to the forefront of public consciousness in the past couple of years, which is with the advent of tools like ChatGPT or Claude, or Microsoft Copilot, if you had a chance to use that, which really kind of amaze you with, is this a computer? Is there like a person behind there actually answering my questions? So, and with large language models and generative AI, specifically the ability to summarize documents, to give advice, to correct your grammar mistakes, to generate pictures on demand. You'll notice all the graphics in this particular presentation were generated by an AI, and lots of other possibilities we can talk about. So, maybe we can talk a little bit about AI for us. So in our day-to-day lives, we use AI a lot. Oh, and by the way, you can see some of the weirdnesses as a result of the AI generating this image. There's some pieces don't connect. But that's actually part of using AI is knowing what it's good for and what it isn't good for. So the AI use in our day-to-day lives is everywhere. We've got everything from digital voice assistants, that's Siri understanding what you're saying and playing your song, face recognition, the fact that your phone understands who you are, that's all AI. Social media, huge example of AI algorithms that feed you the information that you need and keep you hooked and on that platform 24/7. The algorithms behind Google search are an example of AI in that it almost seems eerie how it sometimes is able to predict what you want to actually find and auto completes it for you. Other elements where you might find it in use is maps. So when you are using maps to go from place to place, not only does it plot the best route for you, but it alerts you to traffic congestion on the way and weather conditions and events that may be occurring. Recommendations. If you've watched Netflix, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Once you've watched a few shows, you start seeing a whole bunch of shows that look just like that coming up on your recommendations. And sometimes that's a really good thing because you like a particular genre and you can get right into it. Sometimes it's not so good because you don't even see some of the stuff that you don't even know it exists because it never bothers to show it to you. Same thing for ads. Ever bought something on Amazon and all of a sudden every website that you see in the ad section, you start seeing that thing advertised again? Maybe that's a bad example of AI because you've already bought the thing. Why are they showing it to you now? But nevertheless, recommendations are another example of how AI is being used now. Chatbots. Chatbots are increasingly becoming the first point of contact a company has with its customers, especially a company that is selling a digital product, for instance, and maybe doesn't have a huge price point. So they can't afford to hire people to speak to everyone. And so chatbots are increasingly becoming that first line of contact. And as such, they have been evolving significantly in their capabilities. Grammar checkers, I'm sure we've all seen these before, even within earlier versions of Word. You could see that now, but now you can grab an entire paragraph or even an essay that you've written and put it into something tool like Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to fix your grammar errors and maybe rewrite it a little bit to make it sound more professional. Content generation, another great example of AI. All the pictures you see here are examples of content, in this case, pictures being generated by an AI. But increasingly we're seeing books on Amazon that have been written completely by ChatGPT. There's hundreds of them. And publishers are scrambling to find ways to, require people to indicate when that is the case or not, because, not everybody wants to read something that an AI garbled out. And so this is something that all of us have on a day-to-day basis. The spam detection behind our mail is using a lot of AI algorithms to find which emails are likely spam and which ones are not. And you'll notice, at least I certainly noticed, that I get a very rare number of spam messages that are not spam. It's really, really accurate at predicting these. So let's talk about AI in business, because business uses AI in a different way than we do as individuals. And there's a number of things that kind of the top uses of AI in business currently. Customer service is actually at the very top. So these are some of these mechanisms to allow a computer to speak to the person. For example, if you've ever dialed into a bank or some other type of large service, maybe a trading desk, you'll be greeted by an artificial voice and an artificial personality who is asking you about what you need to be done. Cybersecurity and fraud. Businesses are increasingly deploying AI techniques to detect that. Banks especially use a ton of machine learning and fraud detection software in order to identify when a particular set of transactions is fraudulent or not. That's why sometimes your bank calls you like the second that somebody tries to use your card somewhere for a weird charge. And a lot of times it's false. It's in fact yourself. But sometimes they catch a bad charge before it becomes a problem for you. Digital assistants, another way that companies are really plugging into this, which is trying to organize themselves. Maybe people organizing their meetings using a digital assistant, maybe a note taker where they can record a voice note to themselves that's immediately transcribed. Maybe something as simple as in Teams, there's now an option, if you use Teams, to transcribe the entire meeting and even associate who was speaking and what they said. Customer relationship management. How do you keep and retain customers? Many websites these days have a very enhanced and impressive algorithm for trying to retain a customer. If you ever want to quit being a customer of Amazon Prime, for example, or Netflix, they will send you all sorts of tailored messages saying, well, are you sure you want to quit? What if we give you a 30% discount? And all of these things are algorithm-based techniques for retaining those customers based on lots and lots of statistics behind the scene. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I've mentioned in here: inventory management, content creation, as I mentioned, all the way down to recruiting as well. So now I think it's a good time now that we've seen how AI is used individually and how AI is used in business to transition to the main theme of this particular presentation, which is how do you get hired? How do you either work in the AI industry, or how do you use AI to help you get a job in whatever industry you happen to be in? Just because you're not in STEM, for instance, doesn't mean that you can't use AI to help you. So I think before we talk about how you can use AI to do that, it's important to discuss what it is that an employer is looking for when they want to hire someone. And employers, there's a large list, a laundry list of things, but there's a few kind of things that they really want. Everybody wants these things. The first is problem solving. You got to display that you're capable of critical thinking, that you're capable of being creative in your problem solving. So critical thinking means, how do you solve a problem when a problem is presented to you? What is the mechanism that you use in order to solve a problem reliably? When do you question an outcome? Your spreadsheet that they told you should give you this number gives you some different number. Do you question it? Do you say, well, that doesn't make sense to me? Or do you just accept it as the number the system gave you and keep on going? What tools do you use to help yourself with that problem-solving process? And on the creativity side, can you think outside the box when it comes to solving a problem you haven't seen before? Employers want to see that you're capable of these skills. Next thing that they really look for is teamwork and collaboration. So what does that mean? That means you need to have interpersonal skills and you need to be able to handle conflict resolution. These are really common themes in any kind of job scenario where you are not the only person in the company. You have to work with other people, whether you're physically present in an office with them, or if you're remote, a part of a remote team, distributed remote team, it doesn't matter. You're going to have to interact with these people on a day-to-day basis. So on the interpersonal skill side, how do you fit in? How well do you fit into a new group? Are you a chameleon? Can you adopt the colors of whatever group you happen to be in so that you fit in, or are you always sticking out like a sore thumb? So being able to show how you can adapt to different social situations is a big advantage. On the conflict resolution side, show how you can have difficult conversations. Show examples of how you handle yourself under pressure. And how do you de-escalate an argument and reach a consensus? These are all key elements of teamwork and collaboration. And showing that to your prospective employer is going to be a good prerequisite to getting hired. Next thing is work ethic. And this is something I hear a lot more about these days than before. There's some folks are, trashing the latest generation, which I think is just every generation trashes the generation that comes after them, saying, oh, they don't work as hard as we do and whatever. But there is something behind this, which is from a work ethic perspective, employers are looking for dependability and professionalism. They want to know that if they hire you to do a job, you're going to do that job. You're going to show up every day and do that job. And if sometimes you got to stay late, you're going to stay late and do that job. And that job is important to you, like it's important to that company. The more you can demonstrate that to that company, the more valuable they will consider you to be. And on the professionalism side, how do you be consistent with the work product that you produce? Because if you are great one time at creating what the boss wanted, and then the second time you totally blow it, and the third time you get somewhere in the middle, that's not consistency. That's not what they're looking for. Can you be consistent with how you deal with people? Can you be as nice to someone who is not very nice to you as you are to someone who is very nice to you, because you're at work and you got to keep it professional? Or maybe you're on the sales floor meeting potential clients and some of them just rub you the wrong way. Can you keep that demeanor up? Can you keep calm and carry on? And the next thing is communication skills. And to some degree, we talked about that in the work ethic, but communication skills come in three main varieties. There's written, there's verbal, and there's kind of listening skills. So on the verbal side, are you clear and easy to understand? Can you communicate your point quickly, efficiently, and such that the other person understands what you've said and can pivot and answer your question? Can you get your point across quickly, obviously, and can you keep this discussions concise and productive? How many times have you been in a meeting where someone's talking for a very long time, kind of like I am right now, but it's like it's just all noise. You just want to get to the point already. That's your ability to keep a discussion concise and productive. On the written skill side, it's kind of the same as the verbal, but in writing, with the extra added benefit that what you write is forever preserved, because if you send that email is going to stick around forever. So whatever you've been using to make sure that you keep your verbal communications professional, you got to be doubly sure when you're writing things down to make it even more professional than before. And on the listening side, are you a good listener? Can you define even what a good listener is? Can you listen when you're angry or stressed? These are skills that employers are looking for. And the final thing that employers like to see is some leadership abilities. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means practicing and applying all of the above stuff on a day-to-day basis. If you can show that you can do all these things repeatedly, you have the makings of a good leader. And that's going to be very attractive to potential employers. So now that we've kind of identified what are the skills that employers want, and again, this is across STEM, across any kind of job. You could be being hired for a NASA robot building mission, or you could be being hired to sell clothes at the Gap. It doesn't matter. Employers are looking for all of these attributes. So let's get to the point. How can we use AI to help us get that job? What is that job? Well, the important bit here is let's figure out based upon the skills that we need, that they're looking for, how we can use AI to help us with those skills. So let's talk about problem solving. So how can AI help us here? Well, you could talk about how you solve difficult problems using ChatGPT to give you some examples of things you could talk about. Like you can plug in some things you've gone through before and have it make some suggestions. You could have a step-by-step guide on how to solve a problem. And if you're not sure what that guide looks like, again, use these tools to help you suggest what that might look like, and then do some research of your own. It should include standard things like asking a coworker or a boss. When you want to solve a problem, obviously you're going to ask for coworkers and bosses to help you, but they want to see some independent thinking here as well. So that should include how you use tools like Google search, or, in this case, ChatGPT or Claude to help you find the answer. Show that you are on the teamwork and collaboration side. How do you use AI to help you here? Well, when you're writing those emails, when you're about to hit send, why don't you check with a tool like ChatGPT, if that is allowed within your workspace, to say, how is my tone here? Is my tone okay? Am I conveying the message crisp? Maybe it can make some suggestions about how to better word what you're saying. Maybe you should tell them during an interview with your interviewer. You should tell your interviewer to sometimes that you ask GPT to review what you're about to say so that I understand it better and so that you can make tweaks to that communication before you send it. Interviewers will like hearing that you're thoughtful about your communications before you send them. On the work ethic side, from a dependability standpoint, I'm not sure how you can use AI to help you there. But from a professionalism standpoint, I think you can use AI and tools like ChatGPT to spitball ideas and responses to certain situations to help you figure out how to do things better. On the communication side, on the verbal end of it, you can use tools like large language models to help you war game your conversations. Imagine, like, have it say, okay, pose a very difficult question for me to answer, one that I would have a hard time figuring out, and then grade my response to that question in terms of my professionalism and whatever else, and then tweak that a few times so that you get into the sweet spot, so that when you're actually having that conversation with your interviewer, you can use some of those skills to your advantage. On the leadership side, just check that on the back here. On the leadership side, I think, from an AI perspective, the most help you could get is probably just do some research into what makes a good leader, what are good leadership qualities, and you can use tools like ChatGPT to suggest to you some options there, and then you do your own research, and then just make sure that you're practicing those as much as you can. So in terms of a kind of a call to action, what can you do right now to begin? Well, I would, and this is something that I recommend to my own two daughters who are teenagers, and one of them is about to go into university. I told them a year ago, start using large language models, which include tools like ChatGPT and Claude, for everything. Everything that you're allowed to use it for, you use it for that. Not so much because you need the help, but so that you can understand the limitations of the tools, understand how these can be used for the things that you're trying to do. Right. So let's talk about practicing for your interview. How do you practice for your interview? And I do suggest that you practice for your interview because the more you practice, the less time you'll spend practicing in an actual interview. Which every interview is a potential job offer. So those are things that you don't want to waste too much. So focus on the key things that employers want. Ask ChatGPT to throw you some curveballs. Show employers what they want to see. You know what they want to see. Show them what they want to see. And then, be passionate, engaged. No one wants to interview somebody who is like talking in a monotone, has no facial expressions, doesn't get excited about anything. They're trying to imagine working with this person, right? They're trying to imagine working with you. So if you're just sitting there like a bump on a log, it's not going to be very impressive. So try to be, don't be bored, be enthusiastic, do some research on the employer in advance. And then know how to use that technology to your advantage. Employers are always looking to cut costs. They want to be more efficient. They want to do more with less. So show them that you're thinking about efficiency. Show them that, when you were asked to do this, this, and this, you realize that with a little bit of macro help or with changing how the process worked, you could shave a bunch of time off the entire process. They love hearing that sort of thing. Show them that you can and want to make a difference to the bottom line of their organization, to how expensive it is to run whatever that business is. And show them that you're not afraid of using technology to accomplish that. That's most of the slides that I had prepared for everybody here. I'd like to open the floor to any questions. Anybody have anything they want to ask me?
I'm not sure if anyone is ready to unmute. If you are, feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can speak with Mr. Mnushkin. But thank you so far for this wonderful presentation. We do have 2 questions already.
Okay.
The first one is, hi guys, I have a question about the use of AI in the creative arts industries. As you've just indicated about the use of AI in image creation and books written entirely by it, will we ever reach a point where we can't discern between which is human-made or robot-made?
Yeah, I think we will. I think we will reach that point. And I think that there's going to be a lot of hard questions society is going to have to grapple with when that arrives. I mean, already you're looking at an image here, which was entirely AI generated, and there are problems with it. There's this weird arm that just kind of joins together into a meta arm. There's some weirdness over here. It's not perfect, but there are images generated by AI which you would have a very hard time realizing are not real. And that's just with a technology that in this particular sense is maybe like a year old, maybe a year and a half old, and they're improving rapidly. So I definitely see a situation arising very, very soon when the images generated by AI will be indistinguishable from real world. Also on the content generation, if you've been playing around with ChatGPT and asked it to write about something, I mean, what it produces is pretty high quality stuff. I mean, you would have you could detect that it's maybe written by an AI because it's so good right now. Yeah, which is a sad thing to say, that it's detectable because it's too good. So yeah, I think that's a very real problem, and it is heading our way. Now, it may not arrive quite as quickly as we'd feared. I think initially when the AI hype was at its highest, we were kind of thinking, all right, well, ChatGPT 5.0 is coming, and when it comes, it's going to be like all singing and all dancing. You'll be able to do everything through that. And what we've seen is that actually it's extremely expensive to train an even larger language model. Large language models, such as the one behind ChatGPT, currently cost OpenAI $700,000 per day to run the servers that are answering your questions. There's something like 290,000 servers behind ChatGPT currently running. This is a huge, huge computational task. It's not easy to run these things. So, and when you're talking about training a new large language model, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars spent on the hardware time alone to train them. And while we have seen interesting emergent behaviors in large language models, whereby the more parameters you use when creating the model, the more performant and interesting and unexpected are its results, the more quality are its results. So it's not just a straight line or even a diminishing return. It's got a little kind of kick on the back. It's moving up, which means the more parameters you add, the more even better it becomes. But every time you add parameters, the runtime of these things to train the model gets very, very long, very, very fast, and very, very expensive. So it's going to take a while before AGI arrives, which is artificial general intelligence. That is, an AI which is kind of like can do everything that a human can do, but better.
Oh, wow. Oof. And then to follow up on that, we have one more question here in the chat. We have, well, three more questions. For the use of AI to get a job, as you've informatively mentioned, all the possible aspects of how to utilize it, wouldn't there be a risk of dependency on it, like ChatGPT?
Yes, there would be a risk of dependency on it. But I would ask you this: how dependent upon you are you now on Google search to find an answer when you need an answer? I would say you are extremely dependent. I would ask you, how dependent are you on a calculator to do complex math problems? I would argue you're very dependent on that. How dependent are you on electricity to do everything you do in your life? I think that AI is going to be like that for us. It's going to be like electricity for us. Sure, you could live in a wood cabin in the woods and do everything yourself, but would you want to? I think that the real question is, if you shun AI, if you stay away from it because you've got a position, basically, you feel strongly that you shouldn't, will you be losing out in opportunities to those that don't? Right. And that's the slippery slope. If everybody else is using AI to help them generate good looking content and you aren't, and they're doing a good job in a quarter of the time that you are you at a disadvantage? I would argue that yes. Now, I'm not saying you jump in all fully and just commit yourself to that altogether and lose your other skills, but just keep in mind that not everyone has the same stop, and not everyone feels the same way about AI. Some people will jump right in and not look back. Now, true, if all of a sudden AI becomes unavailable, they're going to be completely lost, and you'll have an advantage. But that's like saying, well, okay, when there's no electricity, then they'll be at a disadvantage. Well, how often are you without electricity?
Like, I think just to build upon that a little bit more for the younger students. So looking at, like you mentioned, these like using the AI's tools as more of an assistant, that kind of like, like you mentioned, the electricity, being able to have that advantage or really just having that extra, I guess, leg up really when you're trying to do all these different tasks, especially in school where you have like your schoolwork. I think when we were talking just before, you mentioned that you could even use it for writing an outline for paper. Like you could do it
Absolutely.
yourself, but why would you when you can do it so much faster with the use of AI? So if you could talk a little bit more about that for the student perspective of really harnessing AI as an assistant for themselves.
Yeah. So this is a critical thing. I mean, imagine right now, and I've gone through this with my daughters who have, for example, there was one time when there was a physics problem they were trying to solve. And they've been given a little sheet of paper. It's got a diagram on it, and it's got a bunch of questions about why this works and then show your work, prove how it's working. And they've gone through it multiple times. They can't figure out. They come to me and say, Dad, can you help me with this? And I go, it's been a while since I took physics 11. I don't remember this. Let me start reading the notebooks. Let me start trying to remember how this stuff works. I'm not the best person to ask. But we took a photo of the piece of paper and we put it into ChatGPT and we said, solve problem number one, show your work. And it did so. And lo and behold, it was actually correct. It's not correct every time, but it was correct. And because we asked it to show your work, it demonstrated to us how we were supposed to solve that problem, allowing my daughter to understand the process and therefore be able to repeat it herself in future. So it's like your own personal tutor. You're not asking it to do the work for you, but when you get stuck, you can use it to help you. And it's always on 24/7. It's available to help you out. So I think, and the other aspect of this is this, you are going to learn its limitations by using the tool. Right now, it seems like it does everything, but as we can see from this picture, there's a weird arm here. It's nice to know that not everything that comes out of these things is going to look right. It's nice to know that our problems with what it does. It's nice to know its limitations so that you don't mistakenly think you'll be able to write the entire essay using this thing because actually you've tried that before and it looks like garbage, or you try to use it for a debate tournament, for example. You try to argue the pros or the cons of a point, and you find that it's like using circular arguments is just talking nonsense sometimes. It's good to understand every tool, and the only way you understand it is by using it.
I agree. I like that you mentioned about it's good to understand its limitations, because I feel like we have quite a bit of trust in these systems and not everybody thinking about the limitations. But I won't let you jump into that too quickly because I'm just gonna ask the next person's question. So they said, on the slide, you mentioned start using LLMs for everything.
Yeah.
While LLMs are incredibly powerful and versatile, again, we're looking at limitations. So it says, what are the limitations or potential risks of relying on them too heavily in various contexts, especially in areas like decision making or creative work? And then how do we balance their use of human expertise and ethical considerations? That's a big question.
Yeah. I think it's useful in these cases to imagine an extreme and then decide how we like that extreme. So let's imagine the extreme that you use LLMs for everything. You trust the output that it produces. You don't edit that output and you just give it to whoever is asking for whatever it is. So let's say your prof is asking you for an essay on 16th century art in Italy. And you tell ChatGPT, write me an essay, should be 5 pages long, discuss the art scene, and poof, and it produces the essay without thinking about it, without checking anything. You grab it, you give it to the prof, and job done. It took you all of 10 minutes, and you've completed your work. So, what's wrong with that? Well, there's a few obvious things. First, the prof increasingly they're using tools to try to detect whether or not content has been generated by a large language model like ChatGPT. Those tools are not too bad at identifying, but they do have a lot of false positives. In any case, there's a reasonable chance you're going to get flagged and suspicion will be cast upon you, even if you somehow manage to prove that you did, in fact, write all this yourself. But of course, they're going to look at past examples of your writing, and if there's big differences in that, then you could get yourself into a heap load of trouble if you're using large language models for things you've been asked not to. The next thing is a lack of ideas, right? The lack of originality. Consider that a large language model is merely a prediction engine. It's like an autocomplete. As you start typing, it's figuring out what is the probability of the next word being something given the past 5 words that you've written. In a simplistic fashion, that is what a large language model does. It's just it's been tweaked and trained and to be more useful than that. But ultimately, that is what it is. There is not a thinking person. There's not a thinking machine. There's not a thinking brain behind that large language model analyzing your question in all of its contexts and coming up with the right answer. It's just a probability engine. So chances are, some percentage of the time, it's going to give you garbage, and you need to be able to detect that garbage. How can you detect that garbage if you didn't study the material to begin with? So it should not be used as the sole answer for everything. You should take your existing knowledge, you should apply it to what the large language model has spat out, and then tweak and fix and correct until you've got something that is your own. Sure, the LLM helped you by giving you some maybe outlines, some topics, some typical essay structures, but you filled in the details. Now, another great way of using LLMs, which I think is pretty good, is you write the thing you want to write, and then you ask it to rewrite those bits paragraph by paragraph to make it flow smoother, to increase the readability, make it more concise. And then you see how it did that, and you're like, oh, I see. They flipped these 2 words around. They use a different word here, a different word there. So you're learning, you're locking that into your brain, but you're not using the thing to do everything for you. So I would absolutely agree with you. There's huge danger for those folks that look at this as the answer to everything and use it exclusively without using their own brain. You'll be caught out eventually, and it might not even take that long. But use it as a tool, as an assist, as a calculator, while you're actually thinking about the problem with your own brain. And I think that is the sweet spot for how to use it well.
I agree. I think that's a great answer, especially looking at, like you mentioned, just continuing to edit it in your own way. So keep that human aspect, I guess I could say. Make sure that you're maintaining that when you're using these models, not just, putting it in and taking whatever it gives you.
Assume that what it's giving you has problems. Assume that you need to vet it. Assume that it's your really smart summer student that you've hired to help you, but they don't know everything that you know. So you better double check everything they've done before you send that on up to the boss.
That's great. And then we did have another question, which was asking for more senior employees, what should they do to accept all of these technological changes? Does it make them feel uncomfortable because it appears that AI might be replacing certain jobs? And do you have any recommendations around this space?
I would ask them for a clarification about what senior employee means. Are we talking folks in management? If we're talking folks in management, the constant pressure from up top is one of, in general corporations that are for-profit corporations, there's 2 main lines. There's the income line, and then there's the expenses line. The income line is everybody who is selling something that the company makes to others and getting money to come in. And they're under constant pressure to sell more of the kind of stuff that sells every year all the time, to find ways to be to make more money. That's their job. And on the expense side, everybody's focused on how do we save money? How do we spend less money on keeping the business running? So from a management perspective, most of the management on the expense side is focused on, okay, we don't want to hire so many people to do this particular job because people are expensive. And if we need to hire 10 extra people every time we grow a company by a little bit, we'll just get too big and too unwieldy. We need to find a way so we can get bigger without hiring all the extra people, or maybe just hire one person and grow this much. So they're all that management is interested in is efficiency. They want to find a way to do more with less. So large language models and the tools these things come up with are fantastic. It's music to their ears. They love hearing about that stuff and seeing if they could put it into practice. The real issue is that so far, putting these tools into practice and seeing a real tangible result is not guaranteed. There are some areas where it has a really big impact. For example, if you're a copywriter or if you're a graphic artist and now you're using these tools to help you create stuff that you then perfect some more, that's a big time savings. If you're a software developer, huge time savings because ChatGPT and tools like it, like the GitHub Copilot, allow you to write code like instantly. You just describe what it is you want to do, and up comes a whole bunch of code that'll just work and run most of the time. So it'll help you, when you don't know how to code at all, it'll help you write some code and be useful quickly. So there are areas in the business where it's an immediate boost. There are other areas where you're like, well, let's do a pilot project and see if we can use, this tech to help us become more productive. And that can cost some money to try to run that, and it's not guaranteed to succeed. So to come back to the question of how much of a threat do people view this as, I think that it's the producers. I think it's the people who are actually creating content, creating stuff that feel the greatest threat from this. The artists, I think it's the graphic artists, it's the people who write content. Those folks are feeling the pressure because in the past, there wasn't any other way to do that except through human creativity. Management, they don't necessarily care who creates, as long as we create for less money than it costs us to bring in the profits. But the creatives, they're the ones that are truly threatened. And here, I don't have a great answer for you because while right now this technology may replace 10 to 15% of the workforce as it stands right now, not everywhere, but certain things are particularly susceptible, like content copywriters, for example, people whose job it is to proofread documents. I mean, they're going to be that's a tough job when you've got something like this doing it in seconds. But eventually, how many other jobs will be replaced as this technology becomes more and more sophisticated? That's anybody's guess. And there are certainly a wide range of scenarios with everything from it's going to replace all of us, which means what are we going to do for money? Which means, well, I guess the government is going to have to put us all on the dole. We'll all be paid a universal basic income, and we'll just sit around and drink coconut juice and sit on the beach, and that'll be our job. This thing is just all that this is going to be is just like every other industrial or any other type of technology revolution in the past. It's going to displace some jobs, like when the textile mills became automated and all these people that were manually sewing stuff were replaced by machines that sewed stuff. Sure, there was a bunch of people that lost their jobs because they couldn't sew anymore. They didn't need to be sewing by hand anymore. Machines took over from that. But many more jobs of a different kind, like maintaining the machines or building the machines or other things that those machines made possible, became available. So there's a pessimistic and an optimistic way to view this. I choose to be optimistic. I think that we will see entire new industries born as a result of AI taking over some of the kind of the more mindless things that we used to do.
I think I'm also on the optimistic side of things, more thinking about the opportunities that will come out of it, just because thinking about the pessimistic things will just be
it's no fun. It's no fun.
It's no fun. So I'm going to ask the next question, which was somebody saying, thank you for the information so far. My question would be that how would AI services like ChatGPT, Gemini, maybe even Black Box, how would they be of help in large corporate companies? I think you already kind of touched on this as well, but.
Yeah, I mean, there are some ways that companies are using AI, but this is AI in general, not large language models specifically. This is kind of overall, all the different ways that AI can be used, like machine learning and neural networks and all this other stuff. So if we're talking specifically about how large language models can be used inside of business, what we've seen primarily right now is in the areas where large language models excel, namely summarization, rewording stuff, and perhaps deducing, extracting data out of unstructured data. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you are a website like Amazon and you have collected a whole bunch of customer reviews on products, those customer reviews are just basically paragraphs or sentences or individual words that people have typed in. How do you extract useful information from that you could feed into a computer to crunch some numbers? For example, how do I find out, well, is this a positive review or a negative review? Or what did they like and what didn't they like? Or what are the things they liked and what are the things they didn't like? And group those things into, it was a product problem, it was a delivery problem, it was a price problem. So those types of questions, a large language model is really good at answering. So it can look at that unstructured data that hasn't been split up into individual fields in a database, and it can parse that information and extract from it the structure you're looking for. So those are some of the ways that large language models are being used in business right now.
Very fascinating. And then I'm just going to also move on to the next question, just because I'm keeping an eye on the time.
Yep.
So we have, as you mentioned, that the use of AI services is so vast, notably on the business side. What about in the academic side, like universities and or high schools? Would it be the new norm, or would it become something that will be banned from use?
Banning the use of AI is pointless. It's guaranteed to eventually fail because it's difficult to detect when you've used AI, and the pressure to use it is intense. Imagine that some of you don't have to imagine this. You're probably studying 60, 70-hour weeks right now, trying to get everything sorted out. If you had a tool that would allow you to gain 10 hours a week back because you could save yourself some drudgery, wouldn't you use that? How much of an incentive would you need to not use that? So I think universities and academia will try to ban AI as much as they can, but eventually what they'll need to do is to pivot. They'll need to pivot to the things that AI cannot do. And I think that's going to, I think we're going to see changes in curriculum eventually and in what we're teaching our students because, let's face it, who is going to learn how to be a copywriter when that profession disappears because you don't need it? AI is there now. So how much of how wide of that impact will be on other potential professions that schools are teaching? How much will we start changing in terms of what the training that we're undergoing now to be ready for the jobs? And when we graduate, we have to start looking forward to say, well, some of these professions won't exist. So let's focus on the ones that we know will exist or we believe will become new professions at that point in time. But I think banning it is like banning the calculator. I mean, sure, on some tests where you're validating that a person can do manual calculations, yeah, you can ban them. But, show me a math exam these days where calculators are banned at the university level. It's hard to find. So yeah, I think this is going to become a ubiquitous tool, the banning of which will be extremely difficult.
Definitely agree. Because I currently am doing biomedical engineering. I remember in first year when we were just doing math classes, you would find the odd non-calculator tests, but now with the calculations getting much more complex and definitely much more, I guess, definitely difficult to solve by yourself, we are using calculators all the time.
Exactly.
Even in our own classes, we do have that with when you're doing essays and things, because a lot more of our exams are starting to be online. So we always have that part of the school regulations that say don't use AI, but then our professors who understand it and they're getting more into it will say you can use it for this section, like for example the planning section that you mentioned earlier. I agree. I don't think that I don't think we'll be able to even ban AI. It'll be more of a regulated into certain areas, like you can use it for this, but not for the rest.
Yeah, I think there'll be guidelines in place, and enforcement will be just as difficult as it is currently now to enforce anti-cheating. How do they know that you didn't copy your answers from somebody else, for example, the most basic plagiarism questions? I mean, they'll be using tools like that to try to detect it. Now, plagiarism from an AI is difficult because these are generative models. The generative in the name means that they are tweaked to generate a unique response more often than not. In fact, if you ask the exact same question of ChatGPT over and over again, you'll notice you'll get a different answer each time. Something will be different about that answer. They're tweaked that way. They're made that way so that it's not just one answer. It's a probability of possible answers it's going to give you. So that makes it harder to detect plagiarism. But, there's also a style to AI, the way that it writes. speaking of style, if anyone wants to play around with this stuff, if you haven't already, I highly recommend that write some paragraph about something, or maybe you've got some book summary that you've got, and then ask the AI to render that whole thing that you've written as a rap by Snoop Dogg, or a poem by some famous poet in that style, and it's a pretty entertaining thing to see.
That's really cool. I actually went to a conference just last summer, and one of the speakers, his final speech was a poem that he got AI to write about the conference just as he was
Yeah.
sitting there. He was on his phone the whole time. We were very confused. And then he pops up with this poem that
Yep.
he had AI writing. Oh, we
Now,
have
it's not going to win any poetry competitions,
no,
but it's
but
pretty entertaining.
still pretty cool. Oh, we have
Yeah.
a hand here from Kurti. I'm gonna just allow you to unmute yourself if you like.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation, Mr. Nushkin. It's
Sure.
definitely an invaluable topic to discuss in today's world for sure. Um, I know you've explained how we can use AI as an applicant, and I can see here on this slide you've also got recruiting as something that we can use AI for. If you were an interviewer, and sorry, this is going to be slightly a bit specific to me a bit. If you were meant to hire, let's say, students or engineers for a high workload project, how would you use AI during the application process to ensure you get the best employees possible?
Yeah, so that would it depends on some of the platform that you're using to sort through the applications. So and that is very much dependent upon each business and whether or not they're using a kind of talent hiring agency to help present them the possible information to weed out the less desirable and keep the more desirable out. But if you so there's a big question there, because each one of these approaches will have a different way to weed out the applicants. There's also the question of how many applicants there are. If there's 3 applicants for the position, well, it's not hard to review all those and make a decision manually. But if there's 1,000 applicants for the position, you've got to have some way to get through that entire data set very quickly and identify things you want. So let's say that you had nothing, but you did have somebody who was familiar with a tool like ChatGPT and was able to do a little bit of coding. You could quite quickly write some code that would go to each document being the resume of that person, and extract from it the key things you're looking for this position. So, for example, if the position is, as you mentioned, it's going to require a lot of work. So you're looking for examples where the person is willing to spend whatever time is necessary to get the job done. If the position calls for a certain skill set, you would say, extract from this, those people that have these skill sets. So you could create a database out of the individual resumes that came in. And that database can then be sorted by all the different extracted fields that you wanted to look at. And then you could pick the ones that are most interesting to you by filtering out those with scores that are too low in certain categories.
Thank you.
Sure.
So just the last final question, because we are in the last 5 minutes. So if anybody else has any other questions, you can raise your hand to make sure you get them in, but we still have Mr. Mnushkin here with us. So this question here is, hi, Mr. Dmitry. I wanted to slightly divert from the business side, which my question would be that given the rapidly evolving nature of fields like medicine, how can we confidently assess the accuracy and reliability of information generated by LLMs? What safeguards should be in place to ensure that the AI-generated medical advice is based on the most current and accurate data?
That's a very complex question. The ethics of using AI as your doctor are very, very complex because it's one thing when you are putting in an essay into an LLM and asking it to clean it up. It's a different thing when you're asking, do I have cancer or not? You don't want a lot of false negatives or a lot of false positives. You want a proper physician will give you whatever information they can give you, and take care not to give you false hope or to scare you too much or do all these different things. So any LLM or AI used for diagnosis, I think initially will need to be under the supervision of a human doctor. And so they'll use the AI to make a first guess at what the problem is, and then a human will review that information and agree or disagree or look for something else. So I think that's going to be how it gets deployed initially. But then it becomes a question of statistics, meaning that they will be collecting statistics on how accurate these predictions are. They'll be comparing those statistics to those of human doctors. And at some point, the statistics from the AI will be better than the statistics from human doctors. And at that point, we may start seeing unsupervised use of AI for medical consultation like that.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think that the last question I wanted to find a follow up with, if nobody else had any extra ones, was if you could give, I guess, a recap of the different skills that students can try to gain as they're using these different AI assistants. What would you recommend? And yeah, just kind of wrapping up the session a little bit.
I would say dive in and play around. That is the best way to learn. Knowledge of these tools will not only help you with the interview process and identifying the skills that you need and the interviewers are looking for, but it will help you get hired because your employers understand that people who know how to use these tools can get the job done faster. So if you know how to use Excel, you'll be more likely to be hired as an accountant or an actuary or whoever, somebody who works with numbers, because Excel is a core tool of the number cruncher. If you don't know how to use it, you're at a disadvantage versus somebody who does know how to use it. Same is true of Google search. If you know very well how to find things that you're looking for on the internet, you're an effective researcher, you're going to be much more efficient as a team member, as an employee, than someone who doesn't. Same thing for AI tools. If you don't know how to use them, you will eventually be at a disadvantage to those that do. So be the first, get on the bandwagon, but approach it from the perspective that this is a tool, it has limitations. I'm going to understand what those limitations are so that I never rely upon things too much when I know they can be wrong.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Dmitry, for your time today, and thank you everyone for your questions. I'm sure that you learned a lot. We were asking so many questions. I hope you were taking notes. But the session will be recorded and available on the YouTube channel and also on my podcast, Cameron's Lab Dive In. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else that you like to watch podcasts. So thank you again, Mr. Dmitry, for your time. It was really a great session.
My pleasure, and good luck to everyone. Thank you.
So I'm going to stay on for a little more time, everyone, so that I can just say thank you to all the people that joined us for today. I would first just like to thank our gold sponsors. So we had Treefrog Consulting, who just gave us this session on looking at AI in the workplace and how we can really use it to our benefit. We had Kari Genetics earlier with their Generational Knowledge is Power webinar with Dr. Karika Weldon. So that was all about looking into, learning more about the sciences, especially as a Bermudian student, when you are the first, which Kari Genetics is one of the firsts. And then we also have, I want to say thank you to the people that have been around me all day. So I've had my mom over here in the corner supporting me, my moderator, Shay, who's also in the backstage. They're doing their little dance right now, I'm sure. I want to say thank you to them for supporting me and just making sure that everyone was organized, letting you guys know what questions you could ask and when. So thank you both to my mom and also to Shay for their support. And I aim to make this an annual event. So the LinkUp will not just be today. We will be hopefully making this into an annual thing. And I wanted to make sure that the message, which is to see it is to be it, gets across to all of you so that you know if you're seeing different people, especially that are in these different fields, it's good to know that somebody else is stepping out and doing it before you so that you know inside that it's possible. So it's great to get that experience and to show you all the different things that are happening. So I'm so glad that you all joined me for that. And in fact, we do have another event coming up at the end of the month. So you might have noticed just over this side, we have Institute Europea, who is another gold sponsor for us, and they will be hosting a AI mock interview session. So what is that and how exciting is it going to be? So we've generated this AI internship that you can apply for. So it's a mock one, but it'll allow you the chance to interview as if you're going to interview for a real AI internship. So you have this company here who has plenty of experience in the AI field, and they're ready to, they've given you one of their top people, Miss Morgan Solier, who'll be speaking with you and also doing quick interviews. So it'll be a little bit like speed dating. So the sessions are about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Why? Because we wanted to get you to not only think on your feet, but be ready to challenge yourself and get you to think about your ideas and really answer succinctly. So I recommend that you do some practice before that interview and, get yourself ready for that mock interview. So that'll be on August 20th. You can register on the website. The form will go live tomorrow. So be sure to keep an eye out so you can be the first to register. And that way you'll be able to secure your spot. Okay, I think I've done all the thank yous I'd like to do for the day. But the moment you all have been waiting for has arrived. I would like to just announce my the giveaway winner. So just give me one moment while I set up for the Instagram Live. Just give me 1 second. I want to make sure that everybody can see it and hear it, and they know that we are ready. Just give me 1 moment, everyone. That's what happens when you're an almost one-woman army. Gotta make sure you're set up. Okay, checking my little connection. Alrighty, so the moment is here. We're going to be announcing our giveaway winner. So, that was from my mom. She found the drum roll sound on YouTube. Okay, sorry. So cheesy. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So again, just announcing the giveaway winner. So this is for a Bermudian student that has been really involved in all different sessions. So they came early to the first session that we had that was at 6:15 a.m. Bermuda time, and they attended that. It's done. They came to the first session, which was at 6:15 a.m. And then they consistently came to the other robotics ones. I believe they were also in the aerospace panel for the To Infinity and Beyond. I am really excited to announce that we have Soleil Bridgewater. We'll be sending you an email later so you can receive your gift bag. So again, sorry. So you can receive your gift bag with this wonderful The LinkUp shirt with our sponsors on the back. And you will also be getting an Arduino Uno, because I think that it's really important when it comes to getting into robotics, because this is super easy to use. There's so much documentation. It is open source. So that means that basically you'll be able to find resources about it and also make it your own. So we have an Arduino Uno with Wi-Fi connection. Yes, I made sure I got you the newest one. And a $100 gift card from Digicel. That'll be ready for you too. So thank you to Soleil for your participation in the LinkUp. Thank you, Soleil, for your participation in the LinkUp. I am so glad that you came. Thank you for linking up with me. And to everybody else, thank you for joining me here at the LinkUp. I am so glad that you all came. And I hope that you enjoyed a wonderful day of seeing to be, looking at these different people from AI. We had robotics, genetics, space, and also aerospace. We had a whole panel of women from the aerospace and space industry. We had an all-Black panel. I'm so amazed by the Black excellence we had for the ethics and AI panel. We had Dr. Karika Weldon, the first woman to solely own a genomics company in the world, and she joined us live. That was absolutely amazing, and thank you to her. And, we had that first panel in the beginning with the two gentlemen speaking to us about social robotics, which is a newer aspect of robotics that doesn't get talked about as often. So I'm glad that we were able to bring that to you. And then finally, again, with Mr. Dmitry Mnushkin, with his AI session, teaching us more about using AI, not only in the workplace, but also for ourselves in terms of academics and really just making our lives easier. So thank you all so much. I hope that you had a great day linking up. I'm so glad that you joined me for the first one, but there will be more. So again, join me on August 9th or I'm just announcing again that we have a partnership with Institute Europea. So they are a large AI company based out of Europe, and they'll be joining us for some mock interviews where you can do a little bit of a speed dating session on August 20th, where you can do a bit of a speed dating session and kind of get involved in learning more about applying for an AI internship and get that experience. So I look forward to seeing you then, and then also next year when we do the LinkUp again. So thank you all for joining me, and I will see you at the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you. Oh, and be sure to review. So send me an email and let me know how you think it went. See you at the next one.